Welcome to TEPSA Talk, the podcast where leaders inspire, share, and grow together. TEPSA is dedicated to celebrating the incredible work happening in education. Each episode, we dive into meaningful conversations with leaders, change-makers, and innovators who are shaping the future of our schools. Whether you're looking for fresh ideas, encouragement, or a little spark to fuel your passion, TEPSA Talk is here for you. Imagine tuning in to hear how leaders are revolutionizing their schools, tackling challenges head-on, and fostering a culture of collaboration. Grab a coffee, hit play, and let's grow together. Welcome to TEPSA Talk.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the TEPSA Talk Podcast. I'm your host, Todd Nesloney, the Director of Culture and Strategic Leadership here at the Texas Elementary Principals and Supervisors Association. We are thrilled every week to bring you different thought leaders from around the world, and today we have a great one. We have Kelly Hastings. Kelly, thank you so much for being on with us today. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
First of all, thank you for having me. I am a former middle school principal. I was a high school assistant and intermediate school assistant. Then I taught social studies at the high school level. So I've been in education for a little while. Anyway, just that's a little bit about me. I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm a grandmother, and just loving life.
Busy, I am sure. Well, Kelly, when we dive into these conversations, one of the first kind of steps I like to take in getting to know you is at some point when we step into those leadership roles, whether it's an assistant principal, a coach, those kind of things, I feel like people have taken two paths. One is either somebody really encouraged them to do that, and that was the only reason they considered it. Well, the other side is like, I just felt like that's where my next thing was, and I was ready for it. What did that look like for you to know when you were ready to move into that next leadership position?
It was a little bit of both, I think. I remember being a teacher and I was getting my gifted and talented endorsement through SMU, and our professor at the time, they came to us and I was helping her get set up and making sure that because it was at my campus, making sure everything was set up. And she said, "Oh, you're going to be an administrator one day." And I was like, "No, I'm not." And anyway, that really stuck with me. And then along the way, I got my master's in curriculum and instruction and only had to take like 3 more classes to get the principalship. And so I'm like, oh, I might as well. You never know. And then I've been in administration longer than I taught. So it was a little bit of both.
I love that. Well, I know you've served in the high school setting, but also in the middle school setting. And so do you find yourself falling more in love with one or over the other? Or what did you see were some of the biggest differences between the two that made you like them in their different ways?
Well, I do love both, right? But I think the middle school kids, the junior high kids, they need more of us than high school. They really need an adult to guide them and support them. And they're trying to figure things out too. And I know high school kids are too, but high school kids have a little bit more going on than at the middle school level. So that's why I love them a lot. Still do.
Well, I know that you've served in those roles and you've had that experience. What would you say is something that you've learned along the way that you're like, oh my goodness, this was a huge lesson for me?
Well, there were many. The first one I think was that I don't have to have all the answers. I really went in thinking I had to have all the answers and realized that no, I don't. There are people around you who are strong. They know what they're doing. Rely on those people around you.
Yeah, that's such good advice. And it's one that I think so many of us struggle to learn. I think of my experience becoming an administrator. When we come out of those classroom settings where we're fully in control and we can do those, we think that that's how administration is. And it's like, nope, I need to ask for help. I need to hire people smarter than me. I need to do all of that. Well, Kelly, I know that you've got something you're super passionate about that you just also recently released a book about. So first, I want to dive into the book. I want to talk about, where did that idea come from? And how did that become something you were like, I need to put this down on paper?
So I retired from principalship a couple of years ago, and I got this email about implementation science and education, and there was a training, 15 minutes from my house. And while I was out of principalship, I was coaching principals and still am. And so I thought, oh, that might be something that I could learn to help principals. And It was like, where has this been all my life? I really wish I would have known it when I was in the seat. And it's really following implementation science when we implement things. And so I developed a model to kind of guide and make it more scripted, for lack of a better word, kind of break it
Right,
down a little bit
right.
for us to follow. It's the scale model. And I just think this, if I would have known this, it would have saved so many people, so many problems that I think I created, and I didn't have to create them.
We were talking about this before we started recording today, and I was just thinking, oh goodness, like this is such a resource I could have used because the implementation process of things, I don't feel like is anything we're ever trained on. Like it's one of those things they think, well, you had stuff implemented with you while you were a teacher, like you should know how to implement it when it's now the whole campus. And I'm like, no, there's a lot more to it than that. So if someone's listening right now thinking, oh, pain point of mine. Like, I totally get this, Kelly, but I don't know where to begin. Like, yeah, I'm going to go get your book because obviously that's going to have some resources in it for me. But like, if I'm just like, okay, we've got this new thing we've got to implement when we're coming up in the next month or in the next school year, what's like my first step? Like, I'm so already overwhelmed.
Well, and it doesn't even have to be the end of the year. It can be coming back in January. We all started things at the beginning of the year, and they may have stayed at the forefront of what we're doing, and they may not have, right? Guilty.
Yep.
And so even coming back at the beginning of the year, remind people what your vision is. Why are we doing this? Remind them about what it is. And then if you don't have a team who are supporting you, build an implementation team. A lot of times those teams are already in place. We just don't use them for implementation. So listen to the people who are doing the work, get a team full of people who are, whatever the implementation is, get them involved and listen to them. They are in those trenches every day. So that means get some good teachers on that team. And then create a plan. How often do we really line out? How are we going to communicate things? How are we going to make sure people have the resources they need? How are we going to evaluate this? How are we going to monitor this? So all those things, if they haven't planned it yet, get a plan down. And I have templates I'm happy to share with your audience. They don't have to buy my book. I'm happy to share. And then act on it. Do your implementation and communicate. So how are we communicating this? Do kids need to be clear on what we're doing? Do parents need to be clear on what we're doing? What about central office staff? Do they know what's going on? So it depends on your implementation, but make sure you communicate what's going on. And then the L in scale is learn, listen, and linger. So just wait a minute, listen to what's going on. How are kids doing with this implementation? How are teachers doing with this implementation? What do we need to tweak so that this can be more effective? And the listen part is listening to the teachers and listening to the kids. And then the E is an empower and elevate. We don't do a good job in education of celebrating people who are doing the really hard work. So celebrate them and be specific with those celebrations. What are they doing well? How can we celebrate them and empower them to make changes that they need to make so that it can be successful?
Well, hearing you talk, there's two things that really stuck out to me. And one is that listening piece. I think that's an easy piece to forget, to make sure you truly are listening. Like, don't just give them an opportunity to share something. Like, take it in, reflect, listen, and make changes if necessary. But I love the empowerment piece as well. Because I've talked to some leaders before, and I've found myself guilty of this at the beginning as well, is, well, if I empower those, it might make these feel bad. And it's like, what does that matter? Like, they deserve to be empowered. Celebrate them so they keep moving forward. Because there's nothing worse than being an educator who's working your tail off and nobody ever acknowledges the great stuff that you're doing. So I love that you shared those. So before we dive into something a little bit more, I want to ask one more question. And I know there's going to be people listening who this automatically came to their head. This is great, Kelly, but I have that one. I have that one that is going to fight me, that is going to refuse. I've already covered the why. I have the steps, Like, what is just a piece of advice you have for when we have that little standalone or very small group who feels like they're just dragging everything down because we're so consumed with trying to bring them on board?
Well, that's the reality, right? And if you only have one, you're pretty lucky. So
True.
it's true, but think about why people do push back on new things. We have teachers in education who have gone through a gamut of initiatives, right, that have not been done well. We can't blame them for pushing back. They've been there, done that, and it hasn't gone well. They know what works. They're going to keep doing it, right? So we need to first understand why they're pushing back and really listen. You mentioned listening earlier. Really listen to why, and we're going to have to make believers out of them. A lot of times, the advice is, oh, well, just document it, write it up. We can work with people better than that, right? And so help them understand why this is important. Yeah, you have told them why. And maybe they need to see it. Maybe they need to see it working in another class. So give them time to go observe it. Maybe they need it modeled. Have someone come in and model it with their kids, because sometimes we have, well, that won't work with my kids. So have someone model it for their kids. They need to see it and really understand it. Otherwise, they're going to keep doing what they've been doing because for them it works. So we have to really make believers out of them.
Well, and that empathy piece I think is huge, because I think you said something that is very easy to forget. And that is, sometimes your holdouts are holdouts because they've seen so many things come and go. And the initial response is, it's just one more. It's just going to come and go too. And I think when we bring less of the, oh my gosh, can't you just make this work? Can't you just be on board? And instead go and have that conversation of okay, tell me about these other ones. Why did they fail? What was frustrating about them? I don't want to make those same mistakes. But like you said, sometimes they'd say, you know what? I'm fighting this because I just don't get it. And I love that you said getting them to go into other rooms and say, you know what? I didn't get it either, but once I saw so-and-so do it, it made so much more sense. So I'd love to cover your room or get somebody to watch your students so you can go have that time where it's not during your planning time, it's not before or after school. I will cover for you so you can do that. And I love that you shared that, Kelly, because those are easy changes that an administrator can make if they think of dealing with someone right now. And this isn't even implementing something new. This is also just if you're dealing with someone who's just down about all the things you're trying to do. So I love that you shared that. So, in your experience, you've seen a lot of this, you've done a lot of this. Tell us a little bit, what's the book called so that we can check it out? And you also go and work with administrators over these kind of things too, right?
I do, right. And I think the coaching piece is very helpful because how many fires do principals put out a day? It's a lot, right?
Yep.
And so their initiative that was really important in August and September sometimes gets going to the bottom of the priority list. That's the reality, right? And so I follow up with coaches every couple weeks or every month, and we just talk about their implementation. It helps it bring it back to the forefront, and then they create an action step, and then we talk about it next time. And so it's just helping it stay at the top of everybody's attention, really.
And what's the book called?
Okay, the book is called Leading Change That Lasts, and 5 Steps to Scale Your Vision into Successful Implementation. There's also a leadership component here too, because we can have all the processes in the world, right? But if we don't have the human components of leading initiatives, it's probably not going to happen either. So there's some leadership pieces in there as well.
I love that. Well, Kelly, the one way I love to end these conversations for our listeners is, we've talked about a variety of things today. I'm sure we could cover many more if we had the time. But if they left with one thing today, what is your one thing for them that you really want people to hear?
I think the biggest thing is the listening piece. Like I said, sometimes administrators think they have to have all the answers, and we really need to listen to teachers, try to get some of that collective efficacy going, and act on what we're hearing. That's, I think, the biggest piece.
Well, Kelly, if people want to connect with you or learn more about your books or your work that you're doing, how can they connect with you?
Sure. Email me, Kelly@enlighteningleadership.com. I would love to talk. Anybody who's listening and has more questions, reach out. I offer that all the time, and maybe 2 people have reached out. So there's a challenge. Reach out and let me know what I can do to help.
I love it. We can all use all these resources and help. So the more we reach out to actually ask people for help, the better we become as leaders. Well, Kelly, thank you so much for being a guest today on the TEPSA Talk Podcast. Thank you everybody for listening or watching another episode. Remember, you can check out all of our past episodes on your favorite podcast platform. Here's let me try that. Here is our challenge for you as you finish up this episode. Go onto your favorite podcast platform and leave a rating, leave a review. They help our message get out to more and more people. Thank you so much for this conversation. We look forward to learning from more people next week. Join us for an all-new episode.